All right, thank you for joining me for today's webinar, Reviewing Students' Work. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be walking you through an overview of the ways in which you can review your students' work on their Hawks assignments. If you happen to have any questions throughout my session, please feel free to chat those into the Q&A box located at the bottom center of Zoom, and I'll be sure to reserve some time at the end to address your questions. With that, I'll go ahead and get started. All right, so within your Teach account, you'll go into your instructor platform and go over to the Reports tab. There are a few areas that you can review assignments from. I'll start over here under All Student Scores. So if you're familiar with this report, it's your basic gradebook hub. So when you click Display Student Scores here, it will show you scores for every student for every assignment in Hawks. You can expand the group out here by clicking the green plus sign. And in this case, it's giving me a breakdown of every lesson. You can expand it out for any sort of web test that you may have given your students, so tests or quizzes. And right here from this report, you can either click on an icon for a lesson and click Review Assignment, or you can select the actual grade for a test or a quiz, a web test assignment, and click Review Assignment. So we won't actually go into reviewing the assignment from here. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I did want to mention to you how you would at least get to reviewing an assignment from this page. From the All Student Scores report, you can click on an individual student's name and be brought to their individual report. I'll go back out to the main reports tab and show you that you can also get into there from detailed student grades. You may be familiar with this report. From here, you can either type on your keyboard to search for a student's name, or you can switch to classic view and choose their name from a drop-down menu here. So once you've selected your student, you'll view all the same data as you would have under all student scores. The difference is that it's for the one student. And here under the actions column, if you click these 3 horizontal dots for an assignment, you can review the assignment. Now here under the detailed student grades report, if the assignment is hyperlinked in blue, for example, 1.1 real numbers, that's telling you that a student has attempted it. So for example, say it's a Hawks homework lesson, the due date hasn't passed and the student doesn't have a score for it yet. It doesn't necessarily mean they haven't attempted it yet. They just may not have reached that mastery level yet, so they don't have a score. So if you're ever curious, if it's hyperlinked in blue, that means they do have attempts at it. You can also figure that out here by selecting those 3 dots that I showed you. And if it says review assignment, they all have attempts that you can review. So for example, 1.2 is not hyperlinked in blue. So when I click actions here, it's telling me there are no attempts to review yet. Same thing works down here with any sort of web test assignments. If it's hyperlinked in blue, they have taken it, you can review it. So you also could click on the hyperlink in blue. That would also take you to a page to review. So it's really just whatever's easiest for you. Click on the hyperlink for the assignment name, or click on those 3 horizontal dots and click Review Assignment. Okay, so back on the Reports tab, we'll now hop under Assignment Reviewer. If you haven't used this report, I do highly encourage you to use it. I won't go into detail today about this report. If you have questions, you can certainly ask me after the fact or connect with your training and support representative. But this report just gives you a lot of information about where students are spending their time, how many attempts they've taken at certain assignments, what their score was, that sort of thing. But what my goal is today is to show you how to go in and actually review assignments from this page. So right when you come into this report, you get a breakdown for the lessons. We'll click into an assignment name here, and it further breaks it down now per student. So I can see those students who have mastered and not mastered here. These columns are filterable. So let's say I bring those who have not yet mastered up to the top, and maybe I want to review those students' attempts to see where they're getting hung up. In this case, I can see they've each attempted it a few to a handful number of times. So it might be helpful to dig into this further and see if there are certain types of questions that they're getting stuck on. So since their names are hyperlinked in blue and I see that they have multiple attempts here, I know, that I can go in and review those attempts. They have tried it before. So let's click on Eric, for example. Now I'm brought to his attempt page where I can see all 4 of his attempts, all of the details related to those attempts as far as when he last accessed it, how much time he spent in Certify for each one of those attempts, and whether or not he mastered. So we might just start with attempt number 1, click review attempt over here on the right. And then you can go through every question and answer. So what you're seeing on the screen is the exact question that this student received and the answer that they selected here. You'll notice you can also display the correct Hawks answer as well. If it's helpful for you to either reference, or maybe you're even using this as a teaching tool with the student, say there may be meeting with you during office hours and you're going through these questions together, you can use the explain error here to identify the error that this student made and discuss that a little bit further. Additionally, there is a solution up here. So there's a fully worked out solution to talk through as well. We'll return to the review. From the question drop down here in the upper left, you can hide the correct and just go through the incorrect questions. So in this case, the student missed the first 3 questions, so they're all incorrect anyway. We can hop into another attempt and I'll show you one that has more of a variety of correct and incorrect. But if that's helpful in helping you go through just the incorrect questions more efficiently, just know that you absolutely can check the box here to hide the correct answers by default. And other helpful information here as well is in the upper right, you can see the time taken per question. So if you know there's a question that a student spent 10 or 15 seconds on that when you go in, it took you a few minutes to answer, that's just kind of a red flag, something you might want to be aware of when you're reviewing students' assignments. So just know you can view the time taken per question up here. Okay, so we'll go back to the overview page and let's hop into one where Eric took a little bit longer. So here, if we hide the correct answers, you'll notice now we just have these 3 incorrect, whereas originally he had answered 4. He had gotten one of those correct initially. Okay, let me hop out of this page here and go back over to the review page. You can also view analytics from this report. So just as a side note, this is like a commonly missed questions report. So when you're reviewing students' work, if you notice that they're missing the same type of question over and over, you may come to this report as well just to confirm that or see if you're missing anything. So in this case, 50% of your students were missing this question type, what we identified as question number 1 here. You can find it on the list down below. It's from lesson 1.1 serial number 7. But what's nice about this report is when you click on the question, it pulls up a question type similar to what your students were receiving. So you can talk through how to solve this together as a class. Okay, so back to the main assignment reviewer page. You can review web tests as well. So let's hop over to the web test tab. All right, so just like with the lessons, it gives you a breakdown of all of your web tests that you have assigned to your course at that point in time and the status of that. So in this case, all 7 of my students in this class have taken the test. That's why it's all green. We'll click on the assignment name here and pop over to the students tab. Again, similarly to what we saw with the lessons, it's a breakdown now per student. You'll see the score that every student received and how many attempts they've taken at the test, as well as when they submitted it and the total amount of time they spent. You can click into a student's name to review each of their attempts, just like with the lessons. So it works very similarly, but there are a couple differences here. So I do want to hop into a test review. So we'll click review attempt. And it brings you to this overview page where you can just see an overview of how many questions I got correct versus incorrect, as well as a breakdown per lesson. When you click next, it brings you to the first question on the test that they missed. So with the web test, we do automatically, just by default, hide the correct questions because typically instructors are going in to review those questions that were identified as incorrect and possibly check for partial credit, that sort of thing. So up here at the top, if you ever wanted to uncheck and view all of the questions, you certainly could. You'd uncheck the hide correct box here. And then we can start with question number 1. So we do have the option for you to enable show work on a per question basis. So if you ever wanted students to explain their thinking to explain how they got to a correct answer, or maybe you wanted them to write out their solution and share that with you. You could have them take a picture of their written out work, and then they could attach it to the show work per question. So this is an example of how that would look on your end. If you enabled show work for the question, a box would show here for the students on their end down below the Hawks question, as well as on your end when you're reviewing the question. And it would show anything that they typed here in the box to explain their thinking. Additionally, if they attached an image of their work, it would show here as an attachment for you to view. And this is an example of what that might look like. So obviously this is just an example. So it says this is an example of uploaded student work when show work is enabled at the question level on a web test. However, imagine what this might look like for your students depending on the course that you're teaching. If it's a math course, for example, this would be their written out solution. So at this point, you could determine if you wanted to give credit to the question, if it was originally identified as incorrect. So for example, if this was 0 out of 2 points, maybe based off of the work the student showed, you actually wanted to change it to 1 out of 2 points. Go ahead and enter that new value in the box and then click Save Score. Once you've selected Save Score, the overall test grade is automatically updated in Hawks. On the other hand, maybe Hawks did give the full credit for it, but you are reviewing work for every question, and based off of what they showed in their work, maybe you were looking for particular areas in that solution and you're not seeing them. You absolutely could change it in the other direction from 2 to 1 and then save the score. So know that you have full control over this. Yes, Hawks does automatically grade the web test for you, but you can certainly go in for any correct or incorrect answers in Hawks and change the point value. All right, additionally, as you're going through these questions, just like in the lesson, you can see the time taken per question here in the upper right, in case that's helpful information for you to have. You can hide the unsimplified answers, and you can also review by question. So, I went in here for one student initially to review this test attempt for this one student. However, let's say I'm on this question here, and I want to know which other students missed this question as well. And maybe I'd rather grade on a per question basis rather than a per student basis. What you would do is check this box here for assignment builder order. And then it will show you these 2 forward and backward arrows here up at the top, where you can filter through all of your students who have answered this question. Originally, it's going to hide the correct. Again, if you want to view this question for every student, regardless of whether they got it correct or incorrect, then just make sure to uncheck this box here. For this example, I only have one student, but if you had multiple students, you would use these forward and backward arrows to go through each student and review on a per question rather than per student basis. When you're done reviewing that question for every student, you would just use this next arrow to go to the next question, and then you'd use the arrows up here at the top, again, to review this question for every student. So just know you have the option to review attempts by student and by question. Okay. Well, that's the gist of what I have for you guys as far as reviewing assignments go today. If you happen to have any questions that have come up during this session or would like for me to cover anything that I maybe haven't covered, please add those questions or thoughts into the Q&A box located at the bottom center of Zoom. And I have some time here to answer those questions. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything come in. So as always, please keep in touch with us and reach out to your training and support representative if you have any questions in general, or if you'd like any help or need a refresher on reviewing students' work throughout the semester. Thank you so much for your time.